So last week we talked about the divine plan is one of freedom, and that this is one of the expressions of the way in which we understand love in the science of mind. That love is the self-givingness of all of life, of the thing itself, into creation. It has given all of itself and has and all of the ways in which life functions and operates is available to us and to all of creation, right? So that outpouring is love, and then because we are have evolved into self-conscious beings, we're the place where that life, that infinite universe, that infinite spirit is learning how to express as an individual and being able to actually see itself by seeing how all of this works. And so we're completely free to explore, to experiment, to do all of that, to create, good, bad, or indifferent, and to experience the creative power. And so that's the freedom, and that's the outpouring of love. And we'll talk later also about the experience of that pouring as it is present to us, right? We call it practicing the presence, and it is the experience of that presence, and to feel it and sense it and know it, right? That's the love part of it. Then the other side of that coin is the law. So this is on the top of page 26. The great love of the universe must be one with the great law of its own being. The law of its own being. And we approach love through the law. So the law, if the infinite reality is everything tangible and intangible, everything physical and non-physical, then there's nothing in terms of creation or the way in which creation operates. There's nothing about those that is not a part of this one infinite reality. Do you see? So the laws that we learn about are literally, we're learning about the nature of the one infinite reality. We're learning about the nature of the way that impulse of love becomes creation. And it does so in a lawful manner. And so we're going to talk about what that means here in a moment. As the love of God is perfect, so the law of God also is perfect. We must understand both. So here's the crux. This is the beginning of us understanding what this law is in this next paragraph. Whatever the nature of any principle may be, insofar as it is understood by anyone, it may be understood by all who take the time to investigate. It does not require an unusual degree of intelligence, but rather a practical application of what we know in order that we may increase our knowledge. So he's going to go on later and give us an example of a principle. So we have to stop and ask ourselves, what do we mean by a principle? Not like the principal of a school, right? But a principle which we can use synonymously with a law. And that's the first definition in the dictionary of a principle. It is a set of laws or rules about how something operates. It also can be a set of assumptions that agreed upon assumptions about how something operates or how it works. So let's take a moment and ask ourselves, what do we know about principle? How can we get a hold of what this means, principle and or law? Because those two words are used interchangeably. In the science of mind, law and principle are synonymous. So let's ask ourselves this question. What is a principle in art? Pardon me? Movement. And so how is that a principle? How is movement a principle in art? Can you help us understand that?
Well, like even if you look at all of these, you can see movement in there, and if it utilizes movement, it's just one of the aspects of what can make art art.
Great. But does all art require movement?
No, it does not.
Right. Okay. So that's a piece of it, right? Good. And so we're gonna continue on digging a little deeper. JL, you have a thought?
Expression is a principle I thought about. What is art as an expression?
Yes. Let's see. Could you ever have art that was unexpressed? How about imaginative art that you never actually put down on a piece of paper or share? Would it still be art? Okay. See, this is why we're pressing on this a little bit. So a principle of art is blue and yellow make green. That's a principle of art. Blue and yellow make green. If you are using any medium that allows you to mix colors, whether it's stained glass windows, you put blue and yellow stained glass windows and you shine a white light, you're going to get green. You put blue and yellow fabric that you can see through and you put them together, you're going to get a green feel. You put, whether it's acrylic, watercolor, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you're in kindergarten or whether you're an accomplished artist. Blue and yellow will always make green. Does that make sense to you? Right? That's a principle of art. Now, how you use it, how you express it, is part of the differences in art. Right? I might express my art with a lot of movement. I might dance. I might have very flowy images. I might use a lot of flowy fabrics. But I could also make iconic the Doric columns in a Greek temple, and they're very, static. It's very static. And so the ways in which the principles are then applied and utilized is where our personal freedom comes in. But the principle is the principle. Blue and yellow always make green. If you put too many colors together, you get brown, and ultimately you get black. If you spin a color wheel, and you'll always get white. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? Right? It doesn't matter in what circumstance, it doesn't matter who you are. So let's see if we can figure this out. What about a principle in music?
I would say the harmonic system, the way, sound is a wave, and it definitely divides
into notes, right? And the notes are identifiable, and it doesn't matter what instrument you're playing. An A note is always an A note. And it doesn't matter whether you're playing a piano, a stringed instrument, a woodwind instrument, a brass instrument, right? The harmonics are the same. And the way in which it's cut apart is the same. And in the Western tradition, in the Western music, we use the pentatonic scale, the 8-note scale, right? In some of the Eastern pieces of music, they use a slightly different scale. Their instruments are also created a little bit differently. They make a different vibrational noise, but is equally as replicatable. So the other piece about a principle is it's replicatable. So let's just stick with our scales that we know of. If you play the piano or the guitar or the saxophone or the clarinet, a C scale is always a C scale. Always. It's always a C scale, and it has the same number of sharps and flats. So if you and I have never played a piece of music together, but we can sit down and read music on our instruments, we've learned how to do that. If I hand you a piece of music with a C that's in the key of C, you know exactly what sharps and flats you are going to play and which ones you aren't going to play. Even if you're improvising. Even if you're not playing the song that I've given you and you're improvising a harmony or you're improvising a solo or whatever, you're still going to be in the C scale because that's what the music is written in. Does that make sense? Right? So the principle of music is that these harmonics can be played in a certain order, and we call those scales. So, and again, it's replicatable, it's duplicatable. It doesn't matter what instrument you're playing. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you learned music. So these are the laws and principles. So science is the easiest place to take a look at this. So what is a principle in science? Give me an example of a principle in science. And you guys online, you can put them in the chat, and Joseph will read them out. So you be a part of it too. What is a principle in science? Let's go to online. The folks online, tell us what, you can either put it in the chat in Facebook or you can put it in the chat in Zoom. What is a principle in science? Do we have any takers out there, Joseph? Not yet. Okay, Sheila, go ahead. The law of gravity. The law of gravity. So if it's two small bodies, they still attract each other, the Earth and the Moon. But the Sun and Jupiter do too. And all the solar systems in a galaxy all have gravitational pull between each other. And it's always, it's identifiably recognizable. And it's one of the ways that in astronomy you can tell how far a piece of light is coming from and what it is, because as it moves around, that's how they discover planets, right? As the light is coming from a star, if it bends due to the gravitational pull of a planet or something else, they go, there's something there. And it's a principle that is utterly reliable. And the more they use it, the more they learn about it, and the more they can understand what it shows them. Joseph.
Jeff says it's gravity, and Brenda says it's thermodynamics and gravity and force.
Yes, perfect. These are fabulous examples of principles. And the principles are not bound by what they're being used for. So the law of gravity can be used to shoot a rocket onto the moon, right? But it can also be used to bounce a basketball. Doesn't matter. Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what you're applying it to. It will always work the way that it works. And we can use it, or we can, let me rephrase that. Let me start that sentence over again. The more we understand and the more we discover about the principle, the more applications we have, the more ways we can use it, and the more the principle can teach us. So for instance, the principle of making blue and yellow making green, the more we play with that, it will teach us, well, if we put more blue and less yellow, we're going to get a darker green. If we put more yellow and less blue, right, or we're going to get shades of turquoise and right. And so the application of the principle of blue and yellow making green and then playing with it produces all manner of results, all different kinds of results. And what have artists done through the centuries is but to explore, experiment, play with what, and then some people love turquoise and other people love forest green. Which one is better? Turquoise. There you go. Turquoise, she says, undeniably, right? But that's a personal application, personal taste, personal enjoyment. Do you see? And Chantel gets to say turquoise. And the law does not say to her, well, why do you like turquoise? And the law does not say you shouldn't use turquoise in that painting. Do you see? That's where our freedom that we talked about on the last page, that's where our freedom comes in. And somebody else, I also agree on the turquoise, but somebody else might pick forest green. So when I'm walking through the forest, one of the things that I love the most is the way the sun comes through the leaves. And you get that really bright green, that really light green, and then you get those really deep dark patches, and then you have the green of the different ferns, and how amazing. I mean, there are so many variations of green when you walk through a forest. It's mind-boggling, all of those variations, and somehow they make this patchwork of beauty that is extraordinary, all based on the fact that blue and yellow make green. Do you see? So So when we talk about the principle, what we're wanting to understand is the principle of life, the principle of creation, the principles of the way, of the nature of reality, so that we can discover them and use them. Because the truth is, we're already using them, right? Remember when you were finger painting and you just started painting and painting and painting, and the next thing you know, you had mud? Because you didn't know that if you kept putting colors on top of colors, that you were going to create kind of a mess. And you learned over time, oh, I want this color over here, this color over here. I'm just going to mix these two colors and going to play a little bit. And pretty soon you stop making just brown or just that kind of muddy color that's ugh, and you start having colors that you can see and play with. Do you see? The same thing is true in our lives. As we're using the principles all the time. What we're learning to do is to recognize the principles and how they work, so that we can actually decide if we want turquoise, or we want a clear yellow, or we want a deep green, or we just don't even want to play with green at all. We want to go over in the purples, and we have to learn about blue and red. Do you see? And so this is why, so then Ernest Holmes goes on to say, the study of the science of mind is the study of first cause. And first cause is, what made it green? Oh, blue and yellow. What made me happy? Oh, this experience and that thought. Oh, yeah, I'm going to come right to you, Sheila. So the study of the science of mind is a study of first cause, which can also be called spirit, which can also be called mind, which can also be called the invisible essence, that ultimate stuff and intelligence, right? The principle is the intelligence, the stuff is the thing it's made out of, the quantum field, from which everything comes, the power back of creation, the thing itself. We tend to use the word in our culture, God. But God doesn't give us the image, so we work with a lot of other terms and words to help really get a hold of what it is we're talking about. All right, Sheila.
I just want to give a shout out to my hero, Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his Self-Reliance. Says nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the principle.
Yes.
And I read that 40 years ago, and my life is principle changed. For that reason, not perfectly. Yeah, I love it.
Beautiful. Nothing can give you peace but yourself and principle. So it is the exploration, the experimentation, the learning to discover what these principles are, and to begin to explore them and to experiment. Get out your finger paints, right? The canvas of your life. Get out the finger paints. Notice how we have been consciously or unconsciously, automatically applying principles, and do we like what's on our canvas? Do we like what we're creating? And can we learn something more about how this works, so that our creations are more in alignment with what we want to express, right, JL? And that's where then expression comes in, because we each get to express it differently. We each get to express it in the way that makes our heart sing, that gives us joy, and that allows us to engage in healthy, powerful, productive contribution to the world and to other people. So this is the science part of the science of mind. If I were writing this book today, I would call it the science of consciousness. All right, so we want to get out of the association of mind and brain. We want to get out of the association of mind and intellect, or mind and left brain. All of those are us anthropomorphizing the thing itself. We're using ourselves as the image that we're projecting on the thing itself. All right, so we want to avoid that as much as possible, because we can see over the tens of thousands of years, especially in the Western tradition, how damaging that has become. And so it's not a superhuman, it is a recognition of the principles, and not anthropomorphizing it. So allowing it to reveal itself to us. So this is, let me start that sentence again. So like Emerson and so many people, including the Platonists, all the way going back to the Hermetic teachings, as above, so below. So as in the spiritual realm, as in the intangible realm of cause, so in the form creation realm of effect. So if that's true, we should be able to look at the form creation realm of effect and extrapolate what the spiritual laws are. So we extrapolate what the spiritual laws are, and then we experiment with them to see if we get the same results, so that we can learn, oh, that's how these principles operate, right? Because nowhere is there a book until somebody starts to experiment that says, that has written, you know, 1 million years ago, the law of thermodynamics is. It's not written anywhere. It's always been. People started to look, make hypothesis, experiment, and what was revealed was, oh, the law of thermodynamics always works this way. So now I have that as a hypothesis, I experiment with it, and I have and I start seeing, oh, when I use it correctly, I can do all kinds of things. When I don't use it correctly, the plane crashes, or the thing doesn't work, or the steam engine doesn't go anywhere, or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? Whatever it is. And so we're doing exactly the same thing. And the study of first cause has been people over the centuries looking at the natural world, the more that science has revealed these principles, and then extrapolating, oh, if it's as above, so below, what can we see so below that will teach us about as above? That will teach us about that causal realm that we can start experimenting with. Yes?
Two-part question. What is the cause of principle? And can you create your own principle?
Well, by definition, you would not create a principle. A create a principle is basically a fundamental truth about the nature of something. So why don't you say your question again so that the people online can hear it?
I was curious what the cause of principles is, and do we have the freedom or power to create our own principles?
So, good. These are excellent questions. And so no, if it's by definition a principle, we cannot create it. We can only discover and use it. We might discover principles, like they're discovering principles now of quantum mechanics that in the Newtonian physics were unavailable. They didn't create those principles. They just began to work on a different level of the so below, and new principles were being revealed, some of which they still don't understand. They're still working on trying to figure out exactly what the principle is so that it's replicatably used. So if by definition a principle is a fundamental truth, nobody created the fact that blue and yellow make green. What they did was discover it, and then start playing with it, start using it, start experimenting. So no, we do not create principles. We discover and use them. The test is essentially the scientific test. Is it reproducible? Is it replicatable? Can it be done by anybody, anywhere, in any situation or any circumstance? That's what the scientific method helps us do. We take that idea, we start experimenting on it, and then other people experiment on it somewhere across the Atlantic Ocean, and then somewhere across the Pacific Ocean they experiment with it, and at all different levels and places and ways, and pretty soon the hypothesis has been revealed as, no, this actually does always work this way. And principles begin to be discovered and used. That was the second part of your question. The first part of your question, say it again.
What's the cause?
Yes, what's the cause of principle? Great. We have no idea. That's the short answer. The long answer is, so the long answer is, it's the nature of something. So what causes, let's ask ourselves this question. What causes the weather cycle, the water cycle? What causes the water cycle? It's the principle of the way H2O can be evaporated into gas. When it is cooled, becomes liquid, falls as rain, runs as streams and rivers and oceans, can be frozen when the temperature drops to a certain level, is frozen into snow and ice. When the temperature goes up, so basically what that means is when the H2O molecules vibrate at the slower the molecules vibrate, the more solid they become. So they go from gas to liquid to solid. And the faster they vibrate, which is what heat is, the faster they vibrate, the less solid they become. Now, that is the nature of the atom H2O. And so this is where the question at some point, why or how did it get that way? What causes it? Why is it that way? No idea. But what we can do is discover that it is that way and begin to examine how do we use that in a way that's constructive, that we enjoy, that makes good for others, right? All of those kinds of things. So it is a fabulous question. So in science, again, right, there's 4 forces that were created at the Big Bang. They are essentially a part of the fabric of the universe. They're a fabric of the space-time continuum. What caused the universe, this that we live inside, to have space and time as its fundamental properties? Well, the fact that it's in form. That's what causes it to have space and time, because it is in form. It actually occupies space, and it has duration and time. If it doesn't occupy space and doesn't have duration and time, it isn't a thing. That's the description of something that is physical. Does it make sense? It has a form, right? Even a dot. A dot is a dot. Maybe it has no particular, maybe it doesn't take up any space or volume. It's just a dot, but it has a duration and time because it's a dot until somebody erases it. So it is a form, right? And so what causes that to be so? No idea. Could you have forms that don't have space and time? No idea. When we are in other dimensions and in other planes of existence, maybe we'll answer that question. But in this, right, that's what we're doing, is revealing its nature. And I don't really, it's a great question. I don't know that there's any other answer. Why is it this way? It simply is this way. What we want to do is discover the way it is and work with it and play with it. Does that make sense? Right? And so at some point, and this is the question, so the scientists, what they want to do is discover and use it. What the philosophers have done is bludgeoned their heads bloody against the question, why is it the way it is? And so does religion. Why is it the way it is? Well, it's God ordained, or it's this way because fundamentally the answer to that from a religious point of view is it's God ordained. Right? From a philosophical point of view, there are very many different answers. Plato says it's because there's the realm of ideas that is reflecting itself into reality. Aristotle says it's this way because that's how we experience it. Science of Mind says yes to both of those. Both of those are simultaneously true. Right? And so philosophers are asking, why is it the way it is? Science asks, how is it the way it is? Science of Mind asks, what can we do with it? Well, even more fundamentally, what are we already doing with it, and do we like it? Do we like what we are doing with it? Is it in alignment with the kind of lives we want to live and the contribution we want to make? Is it in alignment with love and joy and peace, or are we just trying to, get what we think we need, and who cares about anybody else? JL.
So I might simplify this too much, and it could be completely wrong, but I would say the cause of principle is what we determine it to be. Like it's a personal decision.
No, not if it's a principle, JL, really. Not if it's a principle, because it has nothing to do with us. If we weren't here, the principles would still be the same.
But the cause.
Well, the cause of what you do with it, how you make a principle causal in your own life, is what you personally do with it. But what caused the principle in the first place, the principle exists whether we exist or not. And the principle was there before we understood it. Before anybody discovered the principles that allow us to fly, those principles all existed. Right? And it's quite frankly what allowed birds to fly. But they didn't know that they were using principles to fly. They simply flew. The cause of our airplanes was us using a principle and experimenting with it and discovering how do we make things fly. So if you cannot imagine it being present without human beings, it's not a principle. That's what makes it truth with a capital T. It's not my perspective. It's not how I look at it. It has nothing to do with any of those kinds of things, right? And so that's what makes it a principle, and that's why we talk about it as a law or a principle, because it is. Ernest Holmes will say it's no respecter of persons. It doesn't ask, were you good to your mother this morning? Did you meditate? Are you a loving person? Doesn't care about any of that. And you can, unfortunately, we have lots of evidence, you can use principles to do harm. Because the principle has no opinion. The principle has no opinion. What happens is that we hopefully are educated, wow, we're doing harm with using the principle this way. If we are people who are seeking to live in alignment with things that are life-giving and life-enhancing, we would call that spiritual people, people that are love-based, people that are wanting to do good in the world. We would allow ourselves to be educated. Using the principle that way causes harm. So let's use the principle differently to deal with, to create a constructive outcome or a positive outcome or a good outcome, or however we want to say that. But the principle itself does not say you can't do that. It's a principle. We hate that part. Because really we want guide rails, right? We want bumpers. I can't bowl, okay, I just admit it. I'm a lousy bowler, and so when I go bowling, I always have to ask the guys that run the thing, can I please use the bumpers? And they always say the bumpers are for children. And I say to them, and that's how I bowl. That is the sum total of what I know about bowling, so could I please use the bumpers? Right, and so that's what we want, right? And we want God to care and make sure that we don't do that. But remember, last week we said the very first thing is we are free. What are we free to do? We are free to discover. So if I bowled every day, I would discover how to be a better bowler, and I wouldn't need the bumpers anymore. But I don't bowl enough. It's not a high enough priority. I bowl like once every 4 years, and I still need the bumpers because I haven't discovered the laws of centrifugal force and the ways in which that ball should go down there. And then, I have intellectual understanding of the angles, that if you hit the pins this way, they'll hit other pins, but I can't execute it, because I haven't practiced it with it enough. So the first thing is we intellectually learn about the principles, then we start applying it, and we have to practice because we don't yet know how to execute it. Because we haven't had enough practice executing, living a life consciously using the principles, as opposed to just throwing the ball down there and hoping that it hits a pin or two, for God's sakes. I can throw gutter ball after gutter ball with the best of them, which is of course why. And we want spiritual bumpers. We want to be able to say that if we're a good person and loving and we treat our mother nice, that God will make sure we don't run off the rails. But it's a principle we're talking about. The principle is not going to make sure we don't make mud on our finger painting. If we put in 5 colors and we just keep putting them on top of each other, we're just going to make mud. And we're going to go, what happened to my beautiful blue and red and yellow, and what happened to all those colors? Well, they just got mixed indiscriminately. And so we don't like that outcome. We have to discover and use it. We are not saved by God, nor are we punished by God. God doesn't, the universe doesn't say, well, you didn't know what you were doing, so therefore you are going to get brown. And too bad for you. I'm punishing you for not knowing that blue and yellow make green. It's silly, right? It's completely nonsensical to think about it that way. But if we're understanding that the thing itself has given everything the love, it's giving itself to us as us, it's given us the ability to understand, discover, and use these principles consciously. We're already using them. We're just on autopilot. We're just unconsciously using them. All the science of mind does is to reveal it to consciousness and allow us to discover for ourselves and experiment for ourselves, using it in our life so that our lives are more in alignment with what we want, more constructive, more loving, more joy-filled, more of a contribution, more of whatever it is that we decide at any given time or period of our lives, how we want to express ourselves, right? How we want to express ourselves. Okay, 2 more comments, and then we're going to close. So we have one over here and one over here. We should also check, are there comments online? We want to say hello to our online people. So before we get back to you, JL, hang on just a second. I know it's almost the top of the hour, but let's just check in. And Joseph, if we have any comments, let's just check in. I know we won't be able to maybe bring in a lot of people in the room, but we want to at least say hello to you. We love that you're there.
Hello, how are you guys doing? Welcome to the Science of Mind class, and this is an engaging conversation, so we want you guys to engage with us. There's a couple of ways you can do that. You can raise your hand if you're here in the classroom with us, and we'll bring the mic to you so everybody can hear you. And then the other is you can simply raise your hand by hitting the raise your hand icon. At that time, I'll ask you to unmute your mic and join us. So welcome to Science of Mind.
Yeah, thank you. Or put your comment in the chat on the Zoom, or in the chat on the Facebook page. Yeah, we want to make sure that you get to contribute as well. I know that I've been just jabbering on here, and we've gotten a lot of good hands in the room. So we didn't stop early enough to check in with you guys, which we will do, which we will definitely do next week. We'll make sure that we turn to you guys much earlier. But don't hesitate to drop your things in the chat, and Joseph will flag me down. All right, so let me know if there's something that comes through there. We're going to go to JL and then to Brenda, and then we'll close.
So I grew up with the understanding that we want to have God-like qualities. So if God is impersonal, would we be more like God if we're impersonal per se?
Well, let's see. You already have God-like qualities, because that's the love. Everything that is true about the one is already true about your essential nature. So you are already love. You are already the givingness of life, and of your life. You're already that. Joy is already the truth of your being. Peace is already available to you. It's already all here. What we're doing is clearing out the false beliefs that keep us from experiencing that. So, and there is a certain level of impersonalness in that we have to recognize that that there's nothing out there rewarding and punishing us. That we actually, the impersonal part of it is that we're utterly responsible for our own lives. Now, clearly it gets a little messy when our lives run up into other lives, and it gets messy when we're talking about the whole of humanity, but right now we're just talking about ourselves individually, right? And so, so the impersonalness is us not, what shall we say? Not being afraid of the experimentation, the discovery and experimentation of these impersonal truths. It also helps us then have a little bit more spiritual detachment, because we stop taking things that other people are doing personally, and we begin to see that they are simply using the universal principles in whatever way they do or don't understand it, are conscious or unconscious of it. And so we can take it less personally and see what's actually really going on. And then our love gets kicked in. We can have compassion for the fact that somebody is running on autopilot and they're not aware of the mess they're making. They're just not, and they're not aware of how it's impacting us. That doesn't necessarily excuse it, but we can hold it differently. We don't take it so personally. So there's lots of ways we can think about that. But the nature of life that you are is the fact that you are already the qualities, and you can already create through using these laws. What you have to do is discover them and decide how are you going to express it. Okay, and we had a comment out here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This past week I heard something that brought together for me how this happens. And it's a quote from Joseph Campbell. Once humanity leaves the oneness of the divine, duality is automatically the consequence.
Right, it's the consequence of being embodied, of being in form, of being in the physical universe. Yes, and so we're constantly having to navigate that.
And the duality of choice.
Exactly, that's exactly right, which is the freedom that we have to choose. We can choose to align ourselves with how life is seeking to unfold, or we can choose not to align ourselves. And that is the nature of freedom. Without that, we're simply a bird or a plant or a planet who is guided by those laws without any opportunity to do anything differently. Right? But we're the place where the universe is waking up to its own creativity, going, wow, I could finger paint and make mud. I could do that. And it might be fun for a while, but then I don't get to experience green, and I don't really get to enjoy yellow. And so right. So we learn that's a part of what's happening is that our freedom is then being educated, as opposed to being rewarded or punished. It's being educated. Do we like the outcome? Good. Yes, Joseph.
We do have one question online. I'll read it to you.
Okay.
It's from Jeff. What if I don't know what to do or which way out of this predicament I'm in? Can't I surrender to Spirit and ask Spirit to guide me in my decision?
Well, you can, but you're surrendering to Spirit as you. There's nothing out there. There's nothing bigger than we are, right? Well, that's not true either. That's not that was not a principled statement. That was complete falsehood. Let me see if we can make a run at it differently and say it differently. We so desperately want something outside of us to make decisions for us. The only way life can work for us is to work through us. So when we are doing that surrender, what we are surrendering into is we are surrendering our humanness to our oneness with the whole. So whether you want to say it's Spirit out there, or whether you want to say it's your higher self, or whether you want to say it's the truth as it is being revealed as you as an individual, all three of those statements are basically pointing to the same thing. There is that within us which is the same and identical to that which is the nature of reality. And we have to stop separating ourselves from it. We're not trying to get to it. We're not trying to hope that Spirit will somehow guide us. We are already Spirit guiding ourselves. The question is, are we doing it consciously or are we doing it on automatic? The question is, are we doing it from our highest and deepest experience of oneness, because when we center into our highest and deepest experience of oneness and we explode out of our humanness, we are spirit, universal spirit, and we actually know how to get out of our predicament. But our humanness doesn't actually want to do it. We don't want the consequences of that. We don't want to be responsible for making those decisions. We pretend that we don't know, and then we just shut down and go onto autopilot and start operating out of old beliefs, false beliefs, old ideas, old habits, old ways of reacting to things. And we are then inside our humanness. And so we think that our spiritual truth is somehow outside of us. It's spirit. So what we're surrendering the limitation of all of our false thinking, which begins and ends with a belief that we are human and that spirit is out there somewhere. That is the fundamental sense of separation, which is necessary to be an individual, but it is a sense of separation, not actual separation. That is the most fundamental false belief that we have to overcome, that we have to grow into. And that's why we have all the mystical practices that allow us to experience ourselves as the one, so that we can then stand in that place when we're in a predicament. Go to the quietness and stand in that place and have it be revealed. Because there is that within us, which is without, which is within, which is also without, which is within, which is also without, right? I mean, we can do this for a long time until we get that it's the same. It's the same. It's just being individualized as me. And that's why we have all the spiritual practices that do that, while we have all the spiritual practices that teach us about the law and how to use it, right? Both sets of spiritual practices are utterly required. You can't just do one set or the other, because it's love and law. The love piece is this: all the practices that have us experience oneness, the practice of the presence, know the truth, become aware of that infinite reality, feel it on the inside and on the outside, discover that we're so much bigger on the inside than we are on this physical plane. All of that, right? We have all those practices that are moving us into the experience of that, so that we can then apply it in the practices that teach us how to manifest, how to use the principles, and how to be creative, co-creating in our lives. And we're not co-creating with spirit. We'll leave you with this. Let's just let it blow your mind completely. We're not co-creating with spirit. We're co-creating with the law. Because you are spirit, individualized as you, using the same law that the macrocosm uses to run the universe. You're using that law, the same law, in the same way to run your own life. So when you say at the end of your spiritual mind treatment, or you're saying in your spiritual mind treatment, I'm turning this over to spirit. No, you're not. You're turning it over to the law. You're using the law. We're discovering and using a principle. You are already so loved that everything you need to discover and use it and to align it with who you want to be, that is already present. That's the love. I mean, it makes me want to weep. I mean, you can't imagine being any more loved. I can't imagine being any more loved. And all that's required of me is to wake up. I don't even have to heal. I don't have to deal with all my trauma. You can, it's important, yes, and we need, we work at every level, but ultimately all I have to do is wake up. That's it. And everything else will begin to fall in line. Okay, so, so we just love it. So we're on page 26. We've done 2 pages now in the Science of Mind from the beginning. I'm so grateful you're joining us. We are here in Dallas, so if you're in Dallas, you're welcome to join us in person as well as online, CSLDallas.org. We have a fabulous celebration coming up. We also have our fabulous engagement fair afterwards. So come and learn about our circles, ways to volunteer, ways to get involved in small spiritual communities within our community. And you can do it online as well. So if you go to CSLDallas.org and you click on the date today, there is a Zoom availability. You can click on that Zoom link after our celebration, and Reverend Karen will be there to talk to you online about how you can be involved and engaged. Because, man, we are alive, thriving, and we want you to be a part of it. We want each and every one of you to be a part of it. So thanks so much. See you soon. Bye for now.